Hello, you're watching AnewZ Morning from Baku. I'm Bakir Hasanov. Here are the top stories. Vladimir Putin says Russia will keep testing a new missile in combat. Following his re-election in November, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump continues selection of political appointees for his second term. Azerbaijan will expand gas exports to more countries, energy minister says. Negotiations at COP29 have ground to a halt after developed nations delayed disclosing figures for new collective quantified goal on climate finance. In a last-minute move, the Western Bloc proposed a 250 billion figure among the pressure to the Global South in agreement. The proposal came with a warning that even this funding might be available under a potential future Trump administration. However, the tactic was met with firm opposition from the Global South, resulting in a deadlock in the talks. Observers say the standoff highlights deep divisions between developed and developing nations over climate finance responsibilities. The next plenary session is scheduled for 13 p.m. Stay tuned as we continue to monitor developments. And back to world news, Russia plans to use its new hypersonic missile again in combat. This comes after it fired one of these weapons into Ukraine on Thursday, hitting Dnipro.
Russian President Vladimir Putin says he has plenty of the new intermediate-range hypersonic missiles in stock, which are ready for use. It's after Moscow fired the new weapon into Ukraine for the first time on Thursday. President Vladimir Putin says he was prompted by Ukraine's use of US ballistic missiles and British cruise weapons that hit Russia. And he says using the missile was a successful test.
I will add that there are no means of counteracting such a missile, means of intercepting it in the world today. They do not exist. And I will emphasize once again, we will continue testing the latest system. It is necessary to establish serial production. We will consider that the decision on serial production of this system has been made. In fact, it has been effectively organized. Considering the special strength of this weapon, its power, it will be put into service in the strategic missile forces.
Using the missile in Dnipro saw 2 people injured, according to Ukrainian authorities. President Volodymyr Zelensky calls the testing of this type of weapon an international crime. It's despite the Oreshnik being fired with a conventional warhead and not with a nuclear one. The US says Moscow only has a handful of these ballistic nuclear-capable warheads.
Following his re-election in November, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has been selecting political appointees for his second term. His recent appointees include the U.S. Treasury and Labor Secretaries and the Director of the Office of Management and Budget, amongst others.
A second term serving as Commander-in-Chief, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump released statements on Friday of his latest appointees under his second term in office. Among them was Scott Bessent, taking the role of U.S. Treasury Secretary. The 62-year-old is a prominent investor and has advocated for tax reform and deregulation. Trump also selected Russ Vought to be director of the U.S. Office of Management and Budget, a position that will assist the president's policy priorities and how to finance them. In a statement published on social media, Trump describes Vought as an aggressive cost cutter. The 48-year-old served in Trump's previous term under the same position and is a key architect for Project 2025, the controversial conservative plan to overhaul the government, although Donald Trump denies any involvement with it. Congresswoman Lori Chavez-DeRemo was selected as Labor Secretary in a move Trump describes would create tremendous opportunity for American workers. According to a statement by the president-elect, he plans to improve working conditions and grow wages. The 56-year-old, who was elected to Congress in 2022, lost her seat to Democrat Janelle Bynum earlier this month. As Housing and Urban Development Secretary, Donald Trump's top pick is NFL veteran Scott Turner. Turner served under Trump's first term as the first executive director of the White House Opportunity and Revitalization Council. The 52-year-old is the founder and CEO of his family's foundation, Community Engagement and Opportunity Council, working to revitalize communities across America through sports, mentorship and economic opportunity. Trump is set to be back in office at the White House in January.
And now to regional news. Protests erupted in Tbilisi following allegations of electoral fraud in Georgia's recent parliamentary elections. Opposition groups have set up tents near Tbilisi State University, demanding new elections, claiming the vote was manipulated and lacked transparency. The ruling Georgian Dream Party insists the election was fair, but protesters continue to call for more reforms and the resignation of key officials. Let's hear more details about the current situation from Nini Nikolaishvili in Tbilisi.
It's Nina from Tbilisi. The post-election period in Georgia still remains tense. The main question is, have elections the country away from the Western integration? The ongoing investigation and the polarized civil society still haven't answered to this question, but European authorities did. Joseph Borrell told that the Georgian Dream leaders have pushed away the country from the European path. The main problem is that the ruling party do not accept these accusations and are continuing their propaganda about Georgian Dream being the only political force capable of keeping peace and stability in Georgia, while opposition's plans still remain unknown. There are mass demonstrations in Tbilisi and other big cities of Georgia, but the process still seems to be in vain. Georgian Dream is taking a different path in its relationship with Europe, moving away from European Commission's approach and aligning with police leaders like Hungary's Viktor Orban. This strategy seems aimed at maintaining economic benefits from Russia while keeping the ties with the West. Georgia's dream shift included the leaving of European Socialist Party in 2023, signaling its new direction. Meanwhile, the European Commission has launched an investigation into alleged violations in Georgia's October 26 parliamentary elections. Opposition parties and NGOs claim that Georgian Dream manipulated the results with irregularities supported by exit polls. The opposition using these allegations to demand accountability, likely increasing the pressure on the ruling party. Georgia's EU candidacy status was unlikely to advance soon, regardless of Georgian Dream standing, and its progress remains uncertain as the country approaches its 2028 elections.
Protests erupted in Tbilisi following allegations of electoral fraud in Georgia's recent parliamentary elections. Opposition groups have set up tents near Tbilisi State University, demanding new elections, claiming the vote was manipulated and lacked transparency. The ruling Georgian Dream Party insists the election was fair, but protesters continue to call for reforms and the resignation of key officials.
Azerbaijan is set to expand its natural gas exports by December. A total of 12 countries will receive gas from Baku. Azerbaijani Energy Minister Perviz Shahbazov announced the plan during the first Istanbul Energy Forum. Global leaders gathered there to address challenges in sustainable energy. The minister also highlighted Azerbaijan's commitment to tackling rising energy demand, climate change and energy security via regional and international cooperation. Currently, Azerbaijan supplies oil to 30 countries. It also aims to export 1.2 billion cubic meters of gas annually by 2027, supported by green energy projects generating 2 gigawatts of power. Minister Perviz Shahbazov also discussed plans for green energy corridors connecting Azerbaijan with Turkey, Europe and the Caspian Black Sea region. Although yesterday was the final official day of COP29, negotiations are still ongoing. Our guys Sean and Orkan Amashov at the venue will update us on the latest developments and share what's being discussed behind the scenes at the conference. Good morning, Guy and Orkan. What's the buzz on the ground?
Well, good morning, Bactia. Good morning, everyone, from here at COP29, a place where people have been working through the night on the finer details of this proposed $250 billion collective contribution to fight climate change. Some smaller countries, some developing countries have expressed disappointment, restating their need for a much larger amount of money. Orkan Amishov is with me as always. Orkan, I want to get into what happened last night and specifically about the timing of when this $250 billion figure was introduced into those negotiations.
Yeah, yesterday was a day of incriminations, recriminations, mutually exclusive propositions and gridlock. This refers to the first part of the day. Then the new draft text of NCQG and other documents emerged. Yes, the impression given is that if go back to the discussion that took place in the Nizami Plenary Hall 2 days ago, it was very clear that developed European countries, also United States, were not willing to reveal any figure in terms of NCQG. They were focusing mostly, but not exclusively, on more ambitious mitigations plans. They were in favor of the reintroduction of UAE consensus about transitioning away from fossil fuels in a just, equitable and orderly manner with a stronger language, saying absolutely nothing about the climate finance goal in a very concrete way. And it looks like that figure, which emerged later, $250 billion US, was disclosed only at a later stage, at the 11th hour. And then developed countries utilized this technology of persuading developing ones that even this $250 billion sum may not be achievable if they do not reciprocate in a way they should reciprocate. So the figure was disclosed at the 11th hour, only too very late. And of course, there was a special emphasis on Trump's re-election and the possibility that even 250 billion figure, which is not satisfactory, which does not meet our demands, which is not good enough to tackle this climate change problem, may not be achievable. So now it looks like that we have seen this element of maneuverability, late disclosure, and then the argument that even this figure may not be achievable.
So this sense in which this may not be possible under once President Trump gets in, the fact that was brought into the negotiation at a late stage possibly caused a sort of negative response, a reaction to,
Yes, indeed, of course, because our initial ambition was one, and still is actually, our wide ambition remains $1.3 trillion US per year by 2035. So we have to keep this target alive, because maintaining this target alive is essential to keeping 1.5 target alive. So what happened throughout the day yesterday, the dichotomy, divisions between global north and global south countries were so manifestly clear that we needed to take a decisive measure and establish a framework around which consensus would have been possible. So that was a tactic employed by global north countries. And if you go back to the statement issued by the US delegation here, they're saying that 250 billion is ambitious but achievable. They also say that private sector should be involved within this process. So when we talk about 250 billion per year by 2035, it's not just a sum involving developed countries' public money being funneled into that fund, into that goal. It also entails private money, also multilateral development banks, I imagine. And also the language employed there is of certain delicacy. And by delicacy, I mean that they talk about richer countries contributing, not just developed countries, because there are those developing countries which do possess greater financial capacities and the credentials, and they want China and some Gulf countries to be involved in terms of raising that money as well. They cited, Western countries, United States and the European countries, they said that we have a huge financial burden now. One part of the burden is related to the Ukraine's war effort. I refer to what's happening in Ukraine now. they have to raise money in order to support Ukraine. They also cited their COVID-related challenges. And the question there is that if we want to raise this money, we don't have enough financial resources. That's what Western countries are saying. We need to raise taxes. Another proposition made was that perhaps we need to incentivize manufacturing sector in developing countries and reduce worldwide trade restrictions in order to generate that money. The key sensibility emanating from the Global North camp is that this money cannot be generated exclusively, solely, purely by the Global North countries by means of public funds. Private sector should be involved, and some developing countries should also play their own role in terms of contributing to that NCQG. That's a reality of the current situation. I imagine that plenary session will start at 1 o'clock, and the latest draft text will be discussed and examined very, very carefully, and hopefully some sort of compromise will emerge. What is very clear to me and to many other people here is that this seems to be the best achievable, feasible outcome that we can hope for.
Well, Ken, one of the activists I was talking to yesterday was quite critical of Western countries, making the point that some of those Western countries have inflicted more than their fair share of pollution on the world. They've been industrialized nations for much longer. They also now have more advanced green economies.
Yes, indeed.
So the argument was that it will be less of a burden, it will be easier for them to make a bigger contribution. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think that the key fundamental moment there is that developed countries, including United States, Britain, France, other European countries, they have contributed to this global warming in such a way that now their financial contributions should correspond with that share of pollution. They polluted the world, they benefited from it because that lies at the heart of the progress attained by the Western world. They now reach a level when they can actually talk very ambitiously about green technology, renewables, whereas those countries which did not benefit from that progress, from that industrial revolution, now in a position of having this growing population, growing demand for energy, and cannot possibly, under any circumstances, have those ambitious NDCs, national determined contributions, and so on. So therefore, it is unfair to those countries with a bigger population, with a greater energy demand, to have those ambitious mitigations plans. When it comes to Germany, to other European countries, it is very easy to talk about ambitious mitigations plans, but the feeling on the Western camp is that we will raise money provided those fossil fuel producing developing countries are ambitious about their NDCs. So there is a connection between the ambition related to NDC and other national adaptation plans proposed by developing countries and the amount of money which the Global North countries are claiming they're ready to raise. And what has happened so far is that compromise means that our initial climate finance goal is now reduced. A wider ambition surrounding $1.3 trillion is still there. That should be achieved. And the point about $1.3 trillion is that this is the money we need now, not in 2035. And if we fail to raise required amount of money today, 1.3 trillion may not be enough in 2030. Then the figure will be probably around $3 trillion. So if we fail to act now, the price later in 5 years will be exorbitant. And then the debate will be even more complicated. So in order not to complicate our lives, not to overcomplicate it, let's do something tangible now. Alas, the reality is that consensus between developing and developed countries cannot be attained as yet. The price will be paid by everybody. If we leave somebody behind, we will leave ourselves behind. Because the key sensibility surrounding this COP, and other COPs as well, is that it's our collective challenge. If we fail collectively. It will not be Azerbaijan's failure or any other country's failure. It will be the collective failure of the world at large. And I'm afraid we have not yet seen very robust, very crystal clear transformation of that linguistic originality that we noticed during day 1, day 2, day 3 into actionable solution which needs to manifest itself today. But it is upon the consciousness of everybody.
Well, very interesting point there, Ken. Yeah, if we fail, we fail collectively. In fact, here we'll be with you throughout the day, keeping you updated. We know, as Orkan said, that there will be a plenary session planned for 1 p.m, and we're hopeful for some concluding announcements sometime after that session. But we'll, of course, be with you every step of the way here from COP29.
Thank you, Guy and Orkan, for the latest updates. As COP29 negotiations continue, environmental groups like Greenpeace are raising concerns about the need for urgent and decisive action to address the climate crisis. Here is a look at Greenpeace expectations and warnings for the summit's outcome.
Greenpeace has outlined its expectations for COP29, calling for urgent climate crisis. The organization emphasized ambitious climate finance objectives, the phasing out of fossil fuel use, and protection of vulnerable communities. Greenpeace stressed the critical role of holding major polluters accountable to secure the funding needed for climate solutions.
The draft text must retain provisions to make polluters, especially giant fossil fuel companies, pay. Redirecting their massive profits to fund climate solutions is not only fair, but essential. These companies have made billions while driving the climate crisis, and it is time for them to pay their share toward repairing the damage they have caused and support a transition to a more sustainable future.
The organization highlighted the disproportionate impact of the climate crisis on developing nations, particularly in Africa, and called for substantial finance to support adaptation and loss and damage efforts.
While developed nations continue to dodge their responsibilities, our communities are drowning, starving, and losing their homes to a crisis they didn't create. We refuse to accept a whole of finance deal that betrays climate justice and mocks the polluters pay principle. To my African colleagues, this is our moment to stand united. No deal is better than a deal that condemns our continent to further climate devastation.
The world's oceans are under immense pressure, with rising temperatures and human activity disrupting marine ecosystems. Experts are calling for urgent action to protect marine life and preserve the health of our oceans. Here is more on the story.
Climate change is real and undeniably one of the most pressing challenges facing our planet. Its far-reaching consequences extend far beyond human society. As temperatures rise, ocean ecosystems are being disrupted and marine mammals are struggling to adapt to rapid changes in their habitats. Shifting migration routes and disappearing food sources are altering life beneath the waves. Species like seals, whales, and dolphins, already vulnerable to natural threats, now face intensified pressures from human-induced climate change. Meanwhile, illegal hunting, overfishing, and environmental destruction are pushing many marine creatures to the brink of extinction.
For 420 million years, sharks have been around. They are the oldest species on the planet. In the last 50 years, we decreased their population by 70%. So this is a horrifying numbers that we can start with. Every year, we kill about 100 to 150 million sharks, most of them due to shark finning for soup, shark fin soup. Another critical issue is some countries where whale hunting is still legal. It's Iceland, it's Norway, it's Japan. In Norway, out of these countries, Whaling is not only legal, but it's being subsidized by the government.
Human activities also create noise pollution, disrupting marine mammals' ability to communicate, navigate, and hunt. Rising ocean noise from ship traffic, drilling, and military activities causes disorientation and strandings. Additionally, pollution from plastics, chemicals, and oil spills harms marine mammals by weakening their immune systems and affecting reproduction. Entanglement in fishing nets and debris continues to calm lives, while boat traffic disrupts communication and migration routes.
The topic of the oceans, of the seas, of marine life is not being discussed as it should be. Although we have to remember that 70% of our planet is water and only 29% is land. But when we put on scales how much the land is being discussed in comparison to the oceans and to the seas, the numbers are completely different. For the past 12 days at COP29 in Azerbaijan, we've held numerous panel discussions, presentations, film screenings. We have the photo exhibition, which is here. Also, we have another photo exhibition outdoor at the boulevard.
Despite these challenges, marine mammals exhibit remarkable resilience. However, without urgent action to mitigate climate change and reduce human impact, the future of these magnificent creatures is uncertain. Despite global efforts to protect ocean life, human activities continue to devastate marine ecosystems.
Yesterday at COP29, we had a whole day which was focused on marine conservation, but also the impact of climate change on ocean health, because you know that the oceans are a sink. So they absorb carbon dioxide. So they have been becoming warmer. We call it ocean acidification, and that is having a very, very damaging effect, of course, on the marine life itself, and no longer able to absorb the emissions. So this is our big challenge. We need people now who are paying attention in government. Shipping and aviation emissions contribute 5% to global emissions. We now need laws in place so that we reduce the emissions from this sector. We need laws in place in the next round of climate action plans, the next round of NDCs.
Climate scientists say that by prioritizing conversation and taking immediate action to protect our seas, we can help ensure a healthier planet for the future generations. These choices will shape the world for them and their experiences in the future.
Well, that's all we have for this hour. You can also get latest news and headlines around the clock on our website, that is AnewZ.tv. Thank you for watching, and we wish you a good day ahead.